let's cover a little vocabulary just for me. So we said StatSig.
Yes,
so
statistical significance, statistically significant, meaning that the way a StatSig calculator works is basically to remove randomization from the picture, right? And so you talked about thousands of consumers on each side, and typically that is true. For most StatSig measures, what you're changing is a small enough change that it doesn't make a big enough disruption for you to say, I have flipped a coin this many times and the results that I have gotten are telling me, right? Mm-hmm. The way I end up teaching this in a class is actually very noisy because I will sit down with a group of 50 to 100 people and I'll have them all flip a coin 10 times and keep track of their results, right? And you look at the different results across the room, and somebody in that room, I've had folks actually very rarely, but flip heads or tails 10 times in a row, right? Mm-hmm. The conversation you have quickly is, okay, you got 7 heads and 3 tails. Can you expect heads to land at 70% for the rest of your life? And they immediately understand that that's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. That's not the way that works. And what that means is, at least in that example, you've not flipped that coin enough times, right? But it also doesn't mean that if you do see 10 heads and then you see 20 heads and then you see, 27 out of 30 are heads, there's a point in there that a statistically significant calculator is going to say, that's not random. I don't know if it's as big or as small as what you're initially seeing, but that is certainly not random. And that's how you use it to at least kind of feel around in the dark that way and say, okay, I found what's important. These are at least the spaces that I can keep changing until I find a headline, I find a call to action, I find meaningful copy that tells my consumer, this is where you thought you were going to be, basically.
Okay. So then leads us to quantitative, meaning that, I'll let you explain it, but.
You bet. Quantitative is, A/B testing is a great example of exactly what you were talking about. And there's other types. There's multivariate testing. There's multi-armed bandit testing. There's different methods into this idea of, I show unique presentations to a consumer and then I lock them into that presentation every time they come back so that they have that same experience, because sometimes I don't convert them the first time that they come. Sometimes it's the second or third time they come. So I make sure that I lock them into that experience so that I understand how they're responding to it. Somebody else has a different experience. I watch enough of those to basically have that mathematics in the background and that StatSig calculator say, here's something that is unique and that's actually standing out, basically. So quantitative is basically, it's that asking the consumer, which of these things do you prefer more? And then watching enough people respond to it until you actually feel like you've got an answer to the question.
And the advantage in this case is that you're not asking them where they're actually thinking and trying to guess what answer you want to hear. They're reacting to presentations.
That's exactly it. This is certainly soft science when you look at it this way, right? A typical scientist would look at a lot of this and say, you've got a lot of holes in how you're examining this, but you're at least examining it from a scientific perspective. And in this case, the person who is having this experience does not know, as they're having the experience, that they're basically being watched in that regard as to how they respond to that. Whereas qualitative, and I'm sure that, if you don't mind, that's where we were probably headed. Qualitative is more the conversation actively engaged, right? I want to know what you like. I want to know what you dislike. This is where you have to be much more careful to not lead your consumer with your own opinions, basically, right? This is why you have to not go to your consumer and say something like, why does this page suck? Basically, right? Because then the consumer looks at that page from the perspective of, oh, that page sucks, actually. Okay, why is that? What's wrong with it? I'm only going to give you feedback now of why I think something is wrong with it. and companies don't think so much about how they influence their consumers when they have that conversation, when they talk to them, because they're so busy trying to get what they want out of the conversation that oftentimes they don't think about the human being on the far side of that and how their responses are going to go. And you've got to be careful with these types of studies. I mean, them just seeing your logo influences the people who are at least pleasers in that crowd and just want to tell you, I love your site. There's nothing wrong with it. Everything's perfect. That's why I come back here time after time. Well, that's beautiful to hear, but it doesn't help me get better, basically, right? And so you want to be careful about how you approach that consumer and say, what was your experience? What could we do better? What did we do great at? You want to hear those things, but you want to really be thoughtful about not leading them into your opinion.
Hey, thanks for watching these golden nuggets. And as a reward, I got another big fat golden nugget just for you. I wrote this book for you to help you get your act together online so you can grow your business better. You're searching, you want to learn. This is a great book. Grab the book, grow your business.
Amazing, right?